And we're recording. Okay, got it. As always, I'm Brian Kynes, the creator of the Tales of Ulran campaign setting. We use Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, heavily homebrewed, to tell the story. And the awesome folks that are joining me this afternoon are here to help me write this one chapter at a time. Okay, tonight has been fun. We're getting started a little later than usual. We started, about 6:30, and now it's 9. And we're working on some new stuff. So surprise, it's Plan B. Plan B was kind of the invention of everyone's need to have something to do on our off days when the whole crew can't join in. Corey, with a Triumph and Blunder, is running like 3 something games a week or 4. Sean, which is great, plays Celine, is working extra hours and doing all other kinds of things there in where he moved to. We'll keep that discreet, and is busy with work and personal things. And Colby is at Holiday World in Indiana, living the dream right now and having free soda drinks and sunscreen. I think are their selling points, right, Jeremy?
And parking. Don't forget the free parking.
And parking and free parking. So Colby's living the dream. We're fantasy, but he's reality, living the dream right now. So the whole Plan B thing is going to be really fun. They're starting at 3rd level, which is that's the only place to start as far as I'm concerned. And they're going to be building these characters from the ground up now that they've played 9th, 10th, 11th level characters in this homebrew system. They've got to know NPCs. They've got to travel the world. They've got to do ridiculous amounts of fun shit. Now, we're doing something easy. There's no script to this. There's background stories, and we're just going to see where the wind pushes this thing, right? And it's going to be fun for me. Hopefully it's fun for you guys. Bella is actually going to be putting up some... what is the name of that program that I sent you a link to?
I believe it's called Expression Camera.
Yeah. So, because of personal reasons and, work obligations, Bella cannot, chooses not to show herself on here. She is trying to find a way to show some animation, show some emotion, and be a part of this, just because I like to see people's reactions. Now, when we record these videos, I can see her just fine. Bella's right there. Hi, Bella. But you all can't. Instead, you're usually used to seeing an animation that I've put together of her character and things like this. With this program, she'll be able to speak and move and animate a picture of her character after it scans her face in. And the effect is pretty freaking cool. We were looking at it, like 15 minutes ago? And, yeah. It's cool, man. I get such a kick out of it. The things that we can do nowadays with this online format is just, it's ridiculous. So, rattling on. Let's go ahead and introduce yourselves and the new characters that you guys will be portraying. I'll go ahead and start with, Jeremy's smoking. Dane's got a mouthful of beer. Which one do I choose? Let's go with Danny.
I'll be playing Ian McGuffey. Been here for a while, but I'll be playing Finn Thier. Goes by Finn. He is a Lunesti elf, and he is he's our version of a blade singer, which is
the Arcane Blade.
Arcane Blade. So new to this character class, and we'll see how it goes. He's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, we've worked on this a lot, and I don't like, Ulran is a different place than the different places that are used in D&D 5e. And, you're not going to have the exact same things, but the flavor's there, and the groundwork is laid down. And what I love about 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and what they have clearly stated and made a point to, is this is a template to play the game. Do what you want to do with this. And I feel weird if I'm creating my own world, our own world, and I'm taking these token phrases, a blade singer. This is a Tarask. This is a blue dragon worm. You know what I mean? So the idea of a blade singer, now that they've made it a wizard class, worked great with our own lore and legends about where elves are from, who elves are in society, what kind of races are they, and he is a lunesti, which is a night owl type version of elves. They have a paleness to their skin. They're much more awake and alert in the night hours of the day. They are more mystic. It's a very interesting take. There are moon elves in regular D&D, but they're not quite like these. And me and Danny have went to great depths and learned a lot, not just about Ulran, but about our own kind of lore, and put our fingers in cracks in the dam and tried to make it make sense. And I'm really proud of what we come up with. So I'm looking forward to seeing you rock out, Mr. McGuffey. Jeremy, no pressure. You're next.
We'll be playing the part of Rook. It is a nether scorned Voldros. Voldros being one of Giantkin. I believe that was our spin of the Goliath race.
Yes. And what was the name again?
Rook.
Rook, as in the piece on the chessboard. Okay. Which is fun because I don't know how to figure out how to type an O with the two dots above it on my keyboard.
0246.
So I have to push 0246 all at the same time.
While you're holding Alt, just tap 0246.
How am I supposed to know that shit? Right?
Wow,
look it
so
up.
easy.
Yeah, that's all I gotta do. I'm just gonna be writing stuff on myself. Magic marker 0246. Yeah. So it's funny, in the Paint Tool SAI, which is a program I use, I've just been taking the pencil and doing two white dots over every time to your name, and it works. And that's a little inside trick for y'all, you know. When all else fails, get the white out. So this also was fantastic. There are Goliaths in D&D, and you know the very famous one, Grog, played by Travis in the Critical Role series. Great character, man. The voice is just right up Travis's alley, and he plays them. But I wanted something very different in our lore in Ulran concerning where giants come from, let alone why they would even have kin, or why giants would have been part of the bloodline of any other race. I wanted to do my own thing. We needed that. And so Jeremy and I worked on this thing and created a race and a backstory as to how they came to be that is very, very well done. I got to give us credit on that, Jeremy. The Voldros are awesome. Their place in society, their creation. The more that we get into with this campaign and it gets revealed naturally, I'm not afraid of that at all. I mean, it is a fun dive into legends and lores. And one thing before I move on to Bella's new character, I've never liked generic stories that make up backgrounds. I've never thought about, you know, the clay pot broke into 100 pieces, and these clay pieces formed the continents, and from there storms were born and they were good or whatever. I don't. I need something a little bit more. Not believable because it's fantasy, but something that has a little bit more depth to it than that. I want to hear about why giants are big. I want to know how a centaur happens. You know, I want to know why an elf's ears are pointy. I don't want to just know it. I want to know why. You know, and so when we are doing these things, we're getting on that level. And we're really trying to figure these kind of things out. And it really makes this that much better. Would you agree with that, Jeremy, with the Voldros? Yeah. It's pretty fucking sweet. And now that I have ran my mouth for an amazing amount of time, Bella, please tell us who you are and about your new character.
So I have a question for you real quick before I say anything.
Yes?
Do I do what she appears to be or what she is?
Why don't you just have fun with everyone and do what you want to do, and I'll just roll with it.
Okay. So my character is named Azhara. She is within a circus troupe, which consists of her father and two siblings, and her family, not her, are druids, and they're able to shift into amazing things, which draws crowds. And she is just seemingly a delightful human performer uh, who's helping facilitate this performance with her family and with the various crowds that she comes across.
That's outstanding. That is it. Danny, Jeremy, take notes. No, your all's introductions were just fine. I'm just giving you shit because that's what I do. So yeah, that's fantastic.
So speaking of foreshadowing, how my background is, you got the little shadow back here.
Yeah, I know that's fantastic. That is fantastic. That's awesome, dude. And the grins on our faces, that's just telling me, and on mine, it's like these folks are going to be fun. So, what we're doing with this recording, really, this is kind of like a session zero. We've done this for at least 3 weekends now, where we've talked about it, and created all this stuff, done great work, and now I'm going to get a little bit into the backgrounds. They're going to have limited interaction in these. These are going to be more like past memories, and you can't alter memories too much. We've already kind of worked on this. I'm going to give them chances to interact with these things, and that's going to get us towards where we need to be. Maybe at the end of tonight, maybe next weekend, who knows. But this is going to be, instead of all of a sudden, all of you feel like you're pulled into a dark cloud, and then you appear in the exact same place at the exact same time. I don't like that shit. So I'm going to get us there, and then I'm going to hand over the keys to everybody to take us where they want to go. Okay? So... Bella, at any point, are you wanting to jump in with your image? Is it ready? Do you want to give it a shot, or you want to wait?
You know what? I'm still working on a little bit, so progress through the others, and I think by the time it gets to me, I think we should be good.
Okay. And when you do, don't just pop it up. Just raise your hands. Hey, Brian, I'm ready. That way, in editing, I can just fade right into it. And I'll know the bark and stuff like that. Okay.
Okay, I know it takes a minute to adjust, so it's probably not going to be a perfect transition over.
It's fine. Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. So let's go ahead. This is interesting. Let's go ahead and start with you, Jeremy. Okay? What we know so far. Let's not even reveal all that. Let's talk about when you arrived in New Gemdar. Okay? Rook, you have been on the ship, the Intrepid, which is a very popular ship here in the city of New Gemdar, a city that you, for some reason, have never really been to before. The Intrepid, you just happened to have stumbled upon this gig, and you believe that you were given the duty, which is usually more the physical tasks and things of that late night shift that you so like to work. You were given the duty of doing maintenance, heavy lifting, things of that nature on the ship. And you had been docked for a brief time in the city of Nojil, which is a magic capital of this partial part of Ulran. Okay, Nojil is a place that magic runs rampant, and it is steeped in it. It is that fantasy magic type place that you think of when you think about magic stuff. It's what we try to hold back from being. When you were docked there briefly, the Intrepid was a favor that your father had pulled. Your father, which you don't have really anything much to do with anymore. You've really decided to kind of be a loner for your own personal reasons, for your own personal demons. And the Intrepid was almost like his way of saying, I'm sorry. Getting you the job to be able to work on that ship. The captain of the Intrepid is, how do I say his name? Garrick Tierdanen, which is based off the Patrick Stewart. As a very loud, boisterous, proper-voiced, shaved head, older man that is very heroic in his stature and voice. His voice is almost characteristically over the top heroic, like people making fun of paladins. It's to that point. But he is the captain of the Intrepid, and it is the flagship of New Gemdar. It was docked in Nojil for a while, and usually you would either stay on the ship on their overnight stays, but usually you were really busy with getting pieces transported on and off the ships in the different docks. In Nojil, roll a perception check for me, Jeremy. The hour is about 1:30 a.m. and there are very few people around. There are whispers of card games that are being held in dark corners of the airship as you are docked alongside of Nojil. There are the creaking of winds going by. This is winter time, probably about the middle of February. Just to paint the picture for you, heavy cloud cover with moon breaking through every so often. The wind would freeze other people, but you're tougher stuff. You're made of tougher stuff than that. What do you get on your perception check?
Started off the campaign right with a natural 20, good sir, for a 25.
Did you? A nat 20. I like it, dude. I like it. In a moment where the wind dies down, you don't like the really quiet moments, Rook. It leaves too much room for you to ponder things, for things to start to stir in your mind. You like the distraction of hard work. You like the distraction of the potential dangers all around you and the uncertainty of which ship you'll be working on next. It keeps you distracted. And in that moment of silence, with the light snow falling, the wind stopping, you have felt like someone's eyes have been on you for at least the last 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours on the deck. And everyone on the deck knows better than to stare at you. You've proven yourself a few times. You even know that you've grabbed a couple people up a few times and asked them what exactly they thought they were looking at. That death would stare them in the face soon enough. They didn't need to peer into it now. Usually people wouldn't stare at you, but as you look around with a natural 20, you see somebody not quite getting on the ramp to the ship, but looking at the ramp and staring up at you from a distance. The ramp that is coming up to the ship is actually magical here in Nojil. It is made of levitated platforms that seem to be made out of fine woods that have almost like bronze, almost like if you're at a theater and they have the bronze railing that goes around with the red draping going in between them, with red, like that kind of stuff along the sides so people don't fall over and plummet, you know. And these platforms that are octagon shaped lead up from one of the main tiers of one of these large castle-like spires and lead to your ship. And he is standing, just now stepping on the very first platform, and as he does, it goes down just a little bit. You can feel the air rush up from underneath of the ship a little bit as this person steps on the first platform. They seem to be average size. They are dressed in a cloak pulled tight because of the wind. With the 25, they seem chilled by this kind of climate. You see several locks of black, dreadlocked-like hair blowing out between a dark face and intense eyes that are looking at you from very tanned skin that are golden colored in the middle as you peer down into him with this 25. And you guys lock eyes for a long moment. He has a scarf pulled up around his nose and he's holding it. He's not from here. What are you doing?
I'm going to approach him.
So would you walk over to the edge of the ship, or would you start walking down towards him from the platforms? How would you like to approach him?
Start walking down the platforms.
As you do, he walks up to the center of the first one. And as he does, he moves the cloak out from around him and puts his arms to his sides and stares up to you. And you can actually see him physically shiver from the cold. And as he does, he makes a cautious look to the right and left. There's a group passing from behind. A group of folks out late, probably drunk. Looks like wizards of some type, maybe with some lady friends that are laughing. You can tell that the alcohol's taken its toll in this group. And he waits for them to go by as his hands linger on his hood. And as they walk on past, he goes ahead and flips it back. This is a man from more than likely the sands of Demir. He is darkly tanned. He is golden-eyed, and these are dreadlocks that are long and twisted and braided, but shaved sides of his heads. They have all kinds of tattoos, but they're not tattoos, they're scars. Almost like, what is it when you cut somebody and it heals over, and what is it called that people do that stuff to themselves?
Scarification.
Scarification. It looks like that on the sides. The skin is kind of pink in places where it has done this, or different kind of colors, and it seems to be done in some kind of pattern. And he stands there and he waits for you. Do you continue downward?
Yes.
As you jump from one to the other, these things bound a little bit different with you, with your girth. Being a Voldros, again, how tall are you and about how much do you weigh? Do you know roughly?
Oh, I had it set somewhere. I know he's very large.
I know you're over 7 foot, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're well over 350 pounds, correct? Yeah. The Voldros have very long arms and are mildly slunch-backed in their normal nature because their hands and their arms are a little bit longer. They have, well, describe to us, Jeremy, just a little bit about what he looks like.
Looks really tall. What skin you can see is I'd imagine it being almost like a dark violet color with the multiple scars on his face, on his neck, being a much lighter color. More often than not, he would keep the hood up and a scarf around his face where only his eyes are typically seen, because he doesn't, as it was stated, he doesn't like being stared at. And being stared at is the reason why he maintains that secretive nature. And then he's got really bright, piercing eyes that contrast against the skin.
Nice. So as you bound down in these, we'll say there are, just for the sake of argument, we'll say there's about, well, I'll tell you. There are 4 platforms. You're on the next one down. He is waiting on that lowest one. Do you wait for him to meet you in the middle, or do you continue to him?
I continue to him.
Okay. He waits.
I'm keeping eyes on him the whole way.
As you do, he looks nervous, but he's still looking around behind him, left and right, as if he's afraid someone will catch him there. It doesn't seem like it's based towards you. I'm still riding you off to 20, okay? As you continue down to the next one, and the next one, now you're one away from him. He steps back, and he goes a low bow, and he takes his arm as he loses eye contact with you, and takes a step back so you have room to land on his platform. Do you go ahead?
Yep. And I do. And instead of standing in front of him, he'll stand to the side of him, basically where their shoulders line up. He won't turn his head to speak to him. He'll just speak to him where he stands.
Okay. Now that you're close to him, he has these yellow eyes that he has almost make him seem kind of emotionless, especially with that pulled up scarf over his face. The scarf of itself is a dulled olive green, but the cloaks and things that he's pulled down off of himself are a tan, which is typical of the sands of Demir, and it has some kind of white writing along different parts of it with white edges on the central part of this that's wrapped around him. It's not quite a Jedi robe, but it's similar in ways. There are also a couple stones that are adorned along the very bottom edges of the cloak, which make it hang kind of flat. These stones seem to be half ovals. They are polished, and they seem to be of some kind of red granite-like color, and you could swear they almost faintly glow with some kind of power as they adorn the bottom of his cloak. It seems to keep it held in place. He looks up at you. He looks left and right and he goes, I've had word that you're heading to New Gemdar soon. Am I mistaken?
We're not.
That's good. For me and you both. But I suppose that depends on the caliber of your person. You don't seem like much scares you much. And he bounces up and down a little bit, knowing that most of the weight is held out of this thing. He knows there's not a lot more give, and he's making a remark to your actual size and girth. He says, looks up onto the ship, and as he does, you can hear a couple guys scurry off as if they were kind of eavesdropping in on what you're doing. And he shoots an eye, and you can hear some people scurry off up above, and he goes, word is you take jobs for people. And I'm people. And I've got a job. He looks you up and
I
down.
take jobs.
What's that, German?
It's good for you. I take jobs.
He says, this one pays a nice price, but not all up front. The other half is on delivery. You interested?
Suppose you're planning to come with us.
You don't want me with you. If I had choice, I wouldn't be with myself right now. Some more people go by. And he pulls his hood up a little bit and hides his face just a bit. And he kind of turns towards you. And he goes, I ain't got much time, so I'm going to make this quick. Hope you don't mind that. And you see him. That now you notice his hands are going towards something. There seems to be something that he's holding underneath of his cloak. Do a perception check again, please. 15. It doesn't appear to be a weapon, but it looks like he has some size object. Could be a foot and a half tall, foot wide, something underneath of there. As he's shifting, and he's getting ready to pull out. What are you doing?
He's still not. Like he's seeing this out of the corner of his eye, but he's still standing. He's got his back to the ship. He's looking out, and he's not making eye contact with this individual at all. He's keeping his eyes straight forward, just speaking to the side.
Okay. He pulls out what looks like not an ancient looking, but a nicely fashioned, interestingly decorated urn. Roll a history check for me.
No, it's great. That's an 8.
Okay. It seems to be eccentric. The colors, you don't like them. It almost seems silly in some kind of artistic way that doesn't really speak to you. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, he holds it up and he says, I can't afford the luxury of giving you a long explanation for this. But in the telling of it, maybe it'll help it get to where it belongs. Inside this urn are the ashes of a dear friend. And they need to be reunited with their family. And they're in New Gemdar, where you're going. I need you to take these to them. You'll know them when you get there. Should be 6, 7 of them a group. Entertainers of a sort. You've not seen anything quite like this group, I'll tell you that. I used to be one of them. They probably think I'm dead. We all have our demons. He looks around, he looks at your shadows. He starts looking at you up and down a little bit. He rolls a perception check of 14. Would he notice anything strange about you?
Not quite yet.
Okay. He's eyeballing you as if maybe he's heard a thing or two about you. Especially looking at those darker spaces around you that kind of make him hold his breath a bit. He says to you, the person inside this urn is very important to them. I can't take it to him myself. I'm afraid I'd lead the same danger that's seeking me out right now currently. I'd lead it straight to them. I wouldn't want to risk their lives any more than I already have. They'll be like me. Entertainers, like I said. Druids, of a sort. Not like any druid you've ever seen. This is one of their own. I'm willing to pay you 500 Orson to get it to them. When he says 500 Orson, you almost shit. Singet is like $1. Orson is like a gold. He's willing to pay you 500 Orson. That does up a normal citizen for several months. Living nice. To deliver this to them. What are you doing?
I can't very well turn down the price, can I?
No, you can't. But for that kind of price, giant, you can't fail. It's not like I've got another one to send.
I don't make a habit of watching jobs.
I've heard that. He rolls an insight check of 19. He's checking to see if you plan on just ditching this money. He's looking to see if you meant the words that just came out of your mouth, Rook.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Rook prides himself on his ability.
He takes his leave of you. He says, DM, find your notebook real quick. Immersion, everybody. Immersion. I'll tell you. Attached to the side of this He takes a note out. And he holds up a clump of wax that seems to be onyx black. And he says an enchantment. And the only words that you can make out, may my message reach their ears. And he wax seals this onto the side of the urn with heat that comes from his own hand. With the checks that you've done recently, you will notice that his fingers are slightly clawed, like his fingernails have went for a while. And on his right arm, he has this gauntlet that is unlike anything you've quite seen. It looks like it's used defensively, but it almost looks as if it's locked on his arm against his will. Roll another perception check with advantage, please. What was it?
12.
Okay. He says, when you get to them, God's hope that there's at least 3 of them left. Tell them Serkan sent you. Serkan. I hope you're doing well. And on that, you see the image of a scorpion embroidered in the metal, but there are chains wrapped around this gauntlet, and they are artistically going around. Looks like they are locking this scorpion image onto his arm. It's almost like the artwork depicts a scorpion being held back by bindings on this gauntlet. These are things you need to remember. Good luck. Pulls the hood down low. Turns and simply walks away. Is there anything else you're doing at that moment?
My payment?
You'll notice when you say that, the sack is down at your feet. It is impressive. It smells the way this man smells. It smells of a foreign place, lands. Almost like the smell of a head shop. The different aromas and things that come from the fabric that it is wrapped in. The fabric is almost silky to the point.
Frozen for me or everybody?
Who is it?
You were frozen.
Oh, was I for a minute? Am I now?
Nope.
Okay.
You're good now.
Sorry about that. I can't help it sometimes when I freeze. It's kind of crazy. So anyway, we've got that. But yeah, with that, we'll end that scene and we'll tell a little bit of a story, Jeremy. Okay? Where would you like to keep? First off, is there anything particular you're wanting to do with the money? Anywhere particular you want to make up that you keep it? And how much detail would you like about the trip there?
Time being, he'd probably keep the gold. He would store the urn in his personal quarters, knowing that very few would rummage through his belongings.
Okay. Okay. As you are going back to your room that night, do you go straight back to your room that night? Do you get the urge to go out and spend a little bit of this, or what do you
There'd
do?
probably be a little bit of carousing. He probably wouldn't get belligerent by any means.
Okay. Would you be storing anything back in your room first and taking a small amount out with you, or would you be taking it all?
He'd be taking the urn back first before he left the ship again.
As you do, and you're creaking back through there, you hear a familiar door open up at the very end of the long hallway. You know this is Garrick's main door to his personal chambers. You hear a deep, robust voice. Rook! Why are you up so late? We depart in the morning, you remember?
You remember I'm up late all night.
Ah, so our deal hasn't changed then. At least not for the time being. We'll be looking for compensation to join us on our next adventure once we land ourselves in New Gimdar. Or you be departing from us, Rook. I'm working on the ledgers and I need to know who and how I'm spending my money on.
Keep an open space. But my intentions are to move elsewhere.
Well, I appreciate the time you've given us. Good night, Rook.
He nods at him.
He shuts the door, giving you a long look through the crack as he closes it. It's interesting. He talks to you more than some of the other people on the ship, and it seems like no matter how mysterious you seem to be, Garrick almost takes that as an invitation. There's something mighty about the man. You've heard all kinds of legends. Just about the things and the feats that he's done himself. It is said that part of the hawk lives in his veins, which you know New Gemdar is famous for their hawk symbolism. As it is a smaller bird, but a mighty bird that does not fear anything. And that seems to be what Garrick has lived his life on. You know that he has been through multiple battles in the defense of that and has ties to Old Gemdar as well, which was the demolished version of the newer city. The old one, of course, destroyed by giants ages ago. For you to even be on this ship is strange, and the people would question it. But they don't dare, because Garrick just gives them the eye. You know there was some kind of deal made that landed you on this ship, but at the same time, you hate that help. You hate that the shit that you're going through makes you treated better than others, maybe. And you don't think you're any better. Moving on from there, I'd like to go ahead and talk to Finn. Okay. Finn, you've been in the city not so long. You set out from your home, which you and I have discussed, when certain things happen to you that we will not disclose right now. You've been in search of answers quietly ever since you came to this place. You were told by others of your creed and of your discipline, the other arcane blades, that if there were a place where a Lunesti elf could find answers, New Gimdar would be that. To you, New Gimdar is the symbol of what it is to truly have a city that is undivided, where all are truly welcome. It almost reminds you of the tales that we tell, of what the immigrants were thinking years ago when they moved to America to find the dream. That kind of feeling, that kind of mystique and nostalgia is the same that you would have felt about coming to this place. In many ways, you see the ignorance in a system of that way because you're very hard-edged into your own beliefs, but at the same time, it seems to be working. It's been working there, and it has brought other kinds of races together that beforehand would have never been in the same continent ever since the old times, and you being someone of some years, even though you don't appear to be. You know about stories. You know about the Draken and their assault on the avian city of dreams. You know how humans and other races came together. You know how the people of New Gemdar were so noble in their acts that other people went to help them. Heroes of all kinds traveled to New Gemdar just in the chance that they might be able to take part in the fight against a giant. It is a strange way to seek possibly instant death just for the gratitude or just for their own name on a wall that maybe no one will ever see. But they do it here. And there is something remotely suicidal yet heroic in the way these people treat their lives. You've seen leaves grow and fall off of trees for many, many years, Finn. And they don't blink an eye at it. It's what makes the short-lived unique. They have a limited time. And that makes every moment count to them. And you're hoping that you can find someone there that has answers. Okay? You've been there for quite some, like I say, not a long time, but months. And you have found many different places that cater to elves and elven kind, but not any that really cater to the Lunesti. The night owls are the people that don't really want to be seen during the day, not because it's their particular way or their own, it's in their blood to do so, but it's from deception. And you hate that labeling. A person that enjoys the night doesn't automatically make you a villain and someone that doesn't wish to be seen. You know that, but that's not common knowledge. That's not the way you're perceived, which gives you a bit of a chip on your shoulder. The looks you get as you walk up and down the streets, reading the books that you've got from bookshops, the color of your skin, the dark hood. Sometimes just the way you keep to yourself and you're quiet and you have a very mystic nature. You feel very connected to the forces of magic here, whereas some people find the only magic in the bottom of a whiskey bottle. Is it you? Are you a little conceited? Or is it right to judge the people for so quickly judging you, just a person that enjoys a midnight stroll? It's interesting. And you've never had that quandary before, like you do lately. You've heard rumor that there seems to be a place where books on shrines are possibly kept. But every time you go there at night, either they're closed, the door's locked up, or there seems to be a long, long line that's way too loud for you. But on one particular night, there are lanterns and fires lit as you're strolling the streets. You would know the name of this shop as D&D Notes. Lots of new names, people. Let's see. Just a minute. Let's go ahead and call this place. I have it written down here. I just can't barely see because I wrote it in pencil. And it's like fine. Okay. Vander's Respite of the Forgotten. Write that down. Okay. They say a noble human man with a dark beard of gray stripes resides in this place. And he is the authority and knows a lot about shrines, especially some things that may be of interest to you or the visions that people would have. Possibly has a record of them. Possibly knows all kinds of things that you've not been privy to. Maybe, and in your thinking, it almost makes you angry that a short-lived would know things that you were not privy to as the guardian of such place. And you almost want to talk to him just to disprove him a little. There's a little tinge of that, you know what I'm saying? There's a bit of, so you think you're a pro, huh? You know what I mean? I could, we've had this discussion briefly. And on this particular night, it seems to be fairly quiet. Not even the Colosseum in the middle of this place, lined with all kinds of statues of heroes and ex-champions, even that seems to be quiet. This place is always in a state of constant festival because of these upcoming battles with these giants, which is just crazy to you. And they celebrate this stuff like it is Memorial Day weekend every single day, and it's tiring. And even the people on this particular night, the wind's a little colder. The clouds have parted back in this way, and the moon shined down a little bit brighter. Everyone's kind of folded up in their shops. You can see groups of people huddled together, especially the gypsies and merchants and stuff like that, have put it up for the night. But as you walk through...
he would pull his hood back and probably look up at it.
Okay. As you pull your hood back and look up at the moon, could you please describe to us what Finn looks like?
Pulls his hood back like most elves would have, are known for having long hair, but his is cut, cropped short. He has a dark beard, but his hair is almost bluish black. It's got a blue tint to the black, and his eyes are a sapphire color. His skin is very pale, almost luminescent.
Okay. And what's your age? Roughly, what would you appear to be?
He would probably look to be in his early 20s, but he's around 200 years old.
Nice, isn't that great? So, as you do, you hear a creaking on the front porch of this place. And you almost weren't even going to look up just because you could have sworn they would have been closed again. But on this particular night, the door is open to the respite. The sign barely moving at this moment as there's a odd break in the wind. Similarly to what I was explaining to Jeremy earlier. And in that quiet moment, you feel eyes upon you, and there seems to be a long brown to dark black-haired man that's standing on the front porch of the place, leaning on what looks like to be a large lance of some kind that is far too big for him. He seems to be dressed up as almost like a gothic type ranger, whereas he has different layers of fabric and different symbols on him and stuff. He also seems to have a chain wrapped around his waist that goes through the head, the eyeballs, and the mouths of skulls that hangs around him almost like a popcorn garland from a Christmas tree. He would look a lot like Jason Momoa that plays Aquaman.
Can I do a history check to see if I recognize his attire?
Absolutely.
History proficient, so 19.
Okay, DC was 18. Very, very good. He is some kind of hunter of the dead. But as far as where he's from exactly, you can't quite get a read on that. But his make and what he is wearing, he seems to be some kind of ranger that hunts the dead and seems to be well versed in that. As he looks back to you and catches eyes with you, and he goes, "It's kind of late, isn't it?"
It is. Dread Hunter. He says the elven word for it when he looks him up and down.
He goes, "Oh, you're clever. Interesting." he pushes with that, and you realize then that his legs are kind of feeble. He moves like a 70-year-old man, but he only looks like he's in his mid-30s. As he brushes the hair kind of back out of his eyes, as if he's been in the fight and it's kind of a mess, and he slicks it back and seems to be tying it like this as he leans his lance up against the wall, and he's kind of tying it hair down like this. He lets it go. He looks back up at you, and he goes, "You know, all you have to do is knock on the door. He's been open for weeks. Not all the time, but you can always just knock on the door." He actually asked me to come out here to let you know that tonight. Takes a coin and flips it and catches it.
Chuckles and he says, "Oh, can you go in her?"
Says, "Doorman pays pretty good in New Gemdar. If you don't have a job, I highly suggest it."
Keep that in mind.
Pockets it, and he sits back down. Instead of leaving, he sits back down, and you get this weird feeling like he wants to make sure everything's going to be okay, and you don't know if that's reassuring, condescending, or what that is, but you know what it's like to hold true to something, even if it doesn't make perfect sense.
So, the other thing is he would almost look like a wizard, but you could tell that there's armor underneath his cloak, which would be weird. And for somebody perceptive, they might notice the hilt of a sword on his side.
Last thing you hear him say to you as you're going in, he goes, "Hell of a night."
They all are.
Right on. So it's saying actually says right on. As you head in, you see a small strawberry blonde girl in what looks like a costume like wizard's robe, carrying way too many books for her size. This girl seems to be maybe between 12 and 13 now, just now starting to become a young woman. And she's carrying up the steps all these books. And you hear a deep, robust voice come out from this long hallway that says, you walk in, there are 2 fireplaces inside this place, Finn. One on the far right, one on the far left. And there seems to be a large workbench right in the central area of this place. This place, you've seen parts of the city that you can tell have been crafted to look like other cultures. There are Elvenkind, there are Draken, even, that walk the streets of this place, which is crazy to you. Okay? And then there are the places that seem like they were somewhat older than they should be. They have a feel of something that, for a city that hasn't been here for all the thousands of years that some have, or the hundreds, I should say, this place feels older than it should. And you get that naturally. Okay? There are 2 half-twisting stairways that go up on the left and right-hand side of this central work counter that go up to this balcony area that seems to be like a whole loft up in there. And from you can see the very front part of what seem like to be large bookshelves that are lined up going straight away from you that seem to have all kinds of pages on the floor. There seems to be one of those old ladders that has the creaking iron wheels on top that would shift back and forth so people could put it on rails and climb up around there with an eerie moonlight that shines out from some kind of window farther back than you can see and shines down to make an interesting pattern on the floor right in front of your feet. You can feel that wind, and there's actually a few flicks of snow that come in as if those windows are open on the far side. From behind the counter, deep, almost like it's in some kind of cellar, a voice comes out. "Ember, if you don't shut that window when you go up there, I will raise the fires even higher. We have had this conversation before." and you hear like a snotty teenager's kind of thing. And as she's climbing up, a book falls. As she turns to get it, another book falls out of her hand from the quick reaction to it, and you almost worry for a minute that she's going to fall backwards down the steps. And in that moment, right before she does, she grabs the railing and throws a hand, and all the books stop, as if time has stopped. Roll a perception check.
That'd be a 20 after bonuses.
A 20. You see a flash of silver go across her eyes. And as this happens, she's holding her hands out, and all the books stop dead before they had a chance to fall on down the steps as she's holding onto the railing, her hair afloat for just a moment as if she is underneath water. And when she looks up and sees you, and all of a sudden the hand moves again, and all the books fall. She grabs one or two. She goes, "You have a visitor. I'll come back for all this." She gives you a quaint kind of look, and she takes the books and she scurries upstairs super fast. He goes, "A visitor." And then you see this man appear from behind the counter. Is there anything you're doing in this moment, Danny?
He's probably smiling after watching the child.
Yes.
In elven culture, children are a rarity because there's so few of them born.
Very true. Very true. In that moment, you lock eyes with a very intense and robust, noble-looking human man. He's looking at you with kind of a half grin on his face, knowing that you were just looking at the child and were somewhat enthralled by it, or at least amused by the nature of it. To describe this man, he looks like Timothy Dalton. He is someone that played James Bond for a short period of time. He was also in that Beautician and the Beast movie, that terrible movie where he played that Russian guy that Fran Drescher was like, it was a horrible movie. But he also does that. He's a very deep-voiced man with a coal black beard with very striking gray stripes that come down off the sides here. Perfectly manicured. Okay? His hair all pulled back. And he has around himself what seems to be like some kind of silver circlet that has several different colored gemstones in the middle of it. The one that seems to be the most prominent is a gold one that is in the center, lined with 2 greens, and then 2 reds, 2 whites, and then 1 blue on the left-hand side, but the blue's gone on the far right hand. Dressed in exquisite green robes laced in golden edges, with silver streaks that match this going through the sides of the hair too. He looks at you and he says, "So having the door open was the trick, I presume."
He says it in Elvish again because he doesn't know the lay term for it, but he says, "The Dread Hunter let me know you were open." He says, "I'm not used to the customs here. I'm new to..."
Truth itself is a custom, is it not? And if that is your custom, then you are welcome here.
I've
Master of the arcane. And he smiles and looks at you. Yes, Bella, what's up?
I think I may have something. Is it okay if I mess around with it on my end for you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, what's great is, in now that you're letting me know, that's my timestamp, right? So when we put this up for recording, I can put that image in whenever. So go ahead and mess around, have fun. We'll continue this on, and if something amazing happens down near your space, we'll probably be like, hell yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
do your
it can
thing.
transition when it gets to my bit, but I want to get it set up beforehand.
That's cool, but thanks for letting us know. That's cool, man. All right. Good deal. Bella's still working on making art come to life. So we'll see what happens. Okay.
He's,
So
he would probably, he's kind of shaken a little bit that somebody recognizes it. He says, so you are knowledgeable of the shrines.
he looks at you and he says, that was a quick jump. I was simply giving you the same courtesy of knowing your title as you know Rainlore's. He says, but an abrupt step, quite forward for a Lunesti.
Uh,
Is it shrines that you seek? I have no shrines here to tell, or is it something else?
seek knowledge. I was
You hesitate.
I seen something.
Ember,
Almost seems frustrated.
bring us something to drink, and shut the door, please. Rainlore, do come in. So, Rainlore walks in and goes over and sits down by the far fire on the right-hand side. The one is the warmest of the two. The one that seems to be the most brightly lit. Okay? Ember, obviously, comes downstairs now, and she seems to have combed her hair and tied it up a little bit and made herself what she appears to be presentable. She's holding a book, and she is... I gotta say something, Bella. That looks really cool, but you're fish-eyed. The eyes, for some reason, are on the far left and right of the head. Everything's cool, but the eyes are weird.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out.
I don't know what the setting is, but yeah. Now hers are perfect. That versions are just fine. But the eyes on the other one, I don't know what's going on. So anyway, back in the moment. But she comes downstairs trying to look intellectual, Danny. And she comes downstairs and she looks at you. And she puts a book down on the counter. And she says, so you're asking about shrines then? Is that right? Did I hear that right?
Did, child.
She kind of looks at you and taken back a little bit. She goes, well, I can read, if that's what you're asking. And for a child, maybe even better than you.
He smiles and he says, I meant no offense.
What'd you say again, Danny? I couldn't hear it.
I meant no offense. She appears human to him, correct?
Yes.
Wow.
When you say that, Vander says, Ember, we don't need to wear ourselves on our sleeve everywhere we go. I've gotten the book. Now take yourself to bed. It's late. She goes, okay. She goes, I'll set some books aside for you. I know where they are. No matter how late it is, I could get them. I read up on them. He goes, Ember, to bed, now, and thank you. She looks over to Rainlore like she's wanting him to step in, like he's the cool uncle. Rainlore just looks over and he's kind of leaning up. And he's starting to work on a piece of food to stare at the table. And he takes that bottle, he picks up and he goes, better listen to him. Up with the roosters. And he takes a big drink of that stuff. And he sits it down and he wipes his mustache off. And there's liquor or something in it like that. And he goes, you're still not an adult, kid. When he says that, she's like, fine. Don't smell like an adult either. He goes, what was that? Rainlore says as she walks upstairs. She goes, nothing. She heads on up the steps and disappears as you can see her silhouette against that moonlight coming in that window. Shortly after, you hear, as Vander goes to say something to you, he winks as you can hear the window slam shut, obviously slammed shut by an angry teenager. He goes, "You can speak freely in here. We have all had our experience with shrines. You've seen something."
You know of my order of the arcane blades.
"I knew of them." And he stops himself. And he says, "I do know of them. I don't know what they've become if you're here. But I am familiar. I must say that the reach of the shrines is far beyond the one that you are familiar with, friend. Are you aware of the others that have been found? I know the lands that you come from sometimes
15.
don't receive the news that this rampantly growing city has to offer."
You got a 15 on a history check.
Okay. What are you trying to...
Whether he knows of the other shrines or not.
You know of the Shrine of the Warrior Saint. But that's directly related to Lancers. Okay. You have heard of... With the 15, you know there's a shrine in Demir, but you don't know much about it. You know, it has something to do with something that's more of a fairy tale. It's a short-lived versions of what a shrine truly is. You didn't really pay much attention to it.
Know of two other shrines.
And you know that there was one found underneath the waters on the Bay of Hope by the Triton people from there, that has to do with the ceremony. That's common knowledge of the what was it called? Something of brotherhood. What was it called, Danny? But it was when they all traded weapons that were made by other cultures from each other. I forget what it was called, but something of brotherhood. And it was where the Triton people and all the different races that were the major controlling races of the world got together and crafted weapons for other races as gifts to represent what they meant to them.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Remember the Pillar of Horns, the Crescent Moon, all these things? That was done at the site of a shrine at the Bay of Hope. That's all you know about. But you know there's plenty more.
I do know of other shrines, but if you know of the blades, there's a ceremony where each of us has to bow down and touch the shrine when we become a full-fledged blade. When the sword, dance, the magic become one.
Vander's just nodding his head and looking at you. Because it's interesting. You can tell it's interesting for him to hear these words. This is like someone describing some ancient act that people just don't know about. And you are someone that practices this. Arcane blades are not worldly. So this is really impressive to him. You can almost see him writing notes down as he stares at you, Danny. Go ahead.
Many times you come away with your blade fully colored. He pulls his out, and it's not quite fully colored yet. It's the tint of the purple around the moon as it's rising.
You hear a voice from the side, somewhat sarcastic. "The 10, huh? Interesting." Vander kind of looks over and rolls his eyes. And he goes, "Don't mind him. He's a skeptic. If it's not got a heartbeat or lacks one, it isn't very real to our friend Rainlore here." He goes, "Exactly right." That's what Rainlore says.
What I saw was Dar Eblin crushing shrines.
When you say that, you hear the bottle sit down and you hear a scoot. And now you also have Rainlore's attention, and his somewhat humorous demeanor seems to have been parted as this is an intense, nostril-flared look to you. He says, that's a word we don't hear very often. Isn't that right, Vander?
The voice in it said, I will rewrite it all.
Vander walks from around the side of the bar and looks at you deeply. You've seen this.
First, I thought it was my brothers playing a prank on me. We haven't had someone see a shrine vision since he stops.
Rainlord says, that's a hell of a prank. If it was, that's fucked up.
It's not. Or I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have been granted leave to leave the Elven lands.
Rainlord stands up and hobbles himself using that lance, and after a few steps, he seems to straighten up and be a little bit more stronger for a moment. As he takes a deep breath, he's carrying that bottle over and he sits it down and pushes it over to Vander gives it a nod. Vander looks at the bottle and waves his fingers to the side to Mick because he's too intent on what you're saying, Finn. And he says to you, describe him. This is weird. No one, when you've told people about this before, Finn, just the symbolism was enough. He's asking a description as if maybe he's seen this fucking thing. That seems very strange to you, but when he says it, he is intent on it. He says, describe him.
He sheathes his sword. He reaches into a pouch beside him and crushes up something, mumbles some words in Elvish, and creates with a natural 19, minor illusion. Perfect picture of it.
Oh, fuck. Okay. When you make that picture of it, you do realize that it was not a sword that he had, Danny. It was a large sai, remember? Like the Reaper's sai. When you said sword initially in the telling of this, for that brief moment, Vander seemed to relax for just a minute, and you heard Rainlord go, phew. And then when you create the illusion in that moonlight coming in from that window upstairs, dances through this thing almost like a hologram, and you can see the dust rising through like the beams of moonlight coming through. But when that sai comes into view and you see it, the illusion begin to shape its curved blade along the floor, and they look up to that. Rainlord walks up to this thing as if he's getting ready to get into a fight with it. He doesn't grab a weapon. He leaves the large lance leaning against the wall, and Vander just looks at it. Rainlord steps up and walks up close to the thing, almost where his nose would be going into the illusion that you've created. He turns around. He says, that's him. Vander touches his chin, waves his hand, and dispels the illusion. Like that.
The last words I heard were a different voice. Seek, learn, grow.
Vander is at a loss for words. And he looks at you. And he looks over at Rainlord. He says, no one outside of this room can know this. You understand? Okay. I'm rolling an insight check. 19 for Vander. Do you understand?
He understands what they're portraying, but you can tell he's probably thinking about, all of his brothers in arms know this. Everybody that was there, he's already counting all the elves that know it, and he's thinking of this as an elven problem, and he just needs information. And he's like, I must learn. I need I need your books. I need your
Rainlore walks over to you and he says, they call him the Harvester.
harvester.
He looks at you. He seems like the gang's growing, Vander.
In 100 years, I am only the second or order to touch the shrine and receive a vision. The last one left. Never spoke of what he saw. And what was his name?
Solomari,
Yes. Uh,
when you say his name,
yeah.
Rainlore looks over to you and he goes, that's where I've seen you before. And he goes, the one from Skywatch, the collects the money up there. And Vander looks at him and goes, has a knowing nod as if he gets what he's saying. And he looks at you. What's that?
You mean collects money?
Rainlore says, I don't know exactly all the ins and outs of what he does, what his job is and stuff, but he's high up there. The kind of stuff that he does and stuff is he's kind of like the watchdog for Skywatch. Airship dock up above the city. Floats when it shouldn't. You know, that place. Says, looks like probably one of your kind, I would say. Maybe a little older. That sound about right?
We must find him.
That's not how it works.
He's seen it too. Maybe it was the same thing. Maybe he got.
He nods his head, and Vander says, and maybe we need to stop and think about everything that we've discovered tonight.
Takes a deep breath and he goes, I apologize. I haven't been this hasty since I was 150 years. It's just.
He goes, it is true, you do move fast for an Lunesti. Nevertheless,
I've left my home. I've left everything. I thought maybe this solution was right here. And then to find out he's in the city.
Rainlore grins and pats you on the shoulder and says, home's where you fall asleep. Sometimes where you wake up. I wouldn't worry so much about that. He goes, you got a place to stay?
Tells him where he's staying.
Okay. You're staying in a loft room. Remember the... I don't have it written down right at the moment now, but there's those elven crafters, Iveron and them, and it is the a taste of the old or something like that. But they have places and refugees for soldiers and different traveling elves and things like that. You have a loft up there that you're paying a modest fee for. It's not great, but it's one of the rooms that has a window where you can be woken by the night when the moon comes out and start your rounds. It's in one district up from where you're currently at.
They don't know what I am. They just know that I'm Lunesti.
Commander says, what you are may be changing as we speak. when you left your home to bring this question to us. Things have changed. Finn. He says, would you mind some daylight tomorrow in order to go over these things? I have some things I need to look into before I can speak on this with any kind of wisdom any further.
He looks around this shop of wonders and he says, would you happen to have smoked glasses? And he reaches into his pouch to pull out.
Let me see. He says, I do not, but I possibly know of someone that might. I could have them meet us at a particular place tomorrow, say around 9 o'clock. Are you familiar with the Drunken Mug Tavern?
I've heard of it. It's seems to be famous in your city.
Its reputation, famous and notorious, are very closely related terms in this city.
The lines were
Interesting.
way too long for a simple meal.
I will have some brought there tomorrow. Meet me there at 9. We can continue this conversation. Is that quick enough for you, Finn?
Very quick. He's stepping out. He starts to think about, him saying that, and it changes. And it occurs to him that the best trained elven warriors guard an indestructible thing.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? I know things that you don't know. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on to Azura's part of this. And when you pronounce that, I know it's spelled A-Z dash A-R-A, but you're pronouncing it with like an H sound, aren't you?
Yeah, I am.
Say it for me again.
Azara?
Azara. Azara. Okay, I just want to make sure I was getting it right. Azara. Okay. So now, in the characters, it's pretty neat. The eyes are better on this one.
This one's fine. I'm just running into an issue with the other one because it's created in a different software. So
Yeah.
it has a very different look to it. So I'm still trying to figure that out.
It's funny because you look a little drunk, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest, and it's okay.
It's not perfect.
No, and
by
that's,
any stretch of the imagination.
but it's really, really neat though, because like raise your eyebrows. See, that's what I'm saying. It's cool, right? So it shows things, and this matches perfectly with Danny. Because Danny, when your eyes start doing that, you've had too many as well, sir. It's all good. It's all good. So, Bella, let's go ahead and move into a little bit for you, then we'll call it a night, okay?
Sure.
Because you've been real patient and stuff, but we also spent quite a bit trying to
Oh
get you
yeah,
up to
no,
gear.
trust me.
But I do want to go through just a little bit of a thing here that I think will help prepare you for next time, okay? So, you guys have been traveling longer than usual. You, Hector, is it Daphne? And don't tell me. Hold on. It's not the devil. It's Damien, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty sure anyway.
The four of you have been traveling for longer than usual. You had a bit of a scare at the last place you were at. You know why you're always looking over your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things you do understand about it. There are certain questions that you don't feel it is your place to ask. But you had a bit of a scare the last time. You think you might have been identified.
Hmm.
And you had to leave pretty abruptly. And the family is trying to get pretty far away from that place before they set up the next venue until they try to make a little bit more money. And you know that the coin, with you guys being traveling for this long, is starting to run shorter than they want to admit to. Now, in your carefree ways, you know, you don't show the signs of the wear and the fatigue and the mental stress of everything that's going on. But the older you get, the more of a burden you see that they carry sometimes. When you were younger, it didn't really matter to you. You were so about the performance. You were so mystified by all the amazing things and all the different places and people you were able to make smile, laugh, the people you're able to entertain through this artistic expression that you guys perform together. But now you're really starting to see the mortar between the bricks. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
You're starting to get insight as to what makes these people tick. And it's starting to make you come up with much more mature questions than the little sunblind girl that you used to be.
Hmm.
You have a mask
Hmm.
that you carry with you. And a lot of times when you see these three, this family that helped you survive, luckily helped you survive,
Hmm.
you'll sometimes cling to it. And remember that they have faith in you, or else you would not have been given this gift. This gift that used to be the possession of someone that was very, very dear to them. As you know that Hector is the term widower. What is the term for a male widow? What is the term?
I think it's widower, yeah.
Yes. You know that this mask belonged to his beloved. That he doesn't talk about all that much. But when he gave it to you, it was a sign that he believed in you. He believed in you as a performer. He believed that you were worth it. And he gives you this thing. It helps hide you, but it also helps bring you out. It gives you everything you need to not just fight back the demons that you have at bay about your own mysterious past, but it also helps you open up and explore all these new beautiful options that are in front of you. This mask helps your imagination become real when the time comes. It is the thing that helps you express yourself in those moments where none of that matters but the performance that you're in the middle of. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And it's a nice comforting piece to you. On one particular night, you know and have caught wind that you're headed towards the city of New Gimdar. That this is a very big place, and you know there are so many different performances that are going on there constantly that you would surely not be singled out and seen and risk the stress and possibly the near capture that you guys are pretty sure you avoided at the last venue you were at. As the night rolls down, you guys travel in a set of two caravans, which are these short wagons that are taller, about as tall as they are long. And you have these two majestic horses that pull them. One is that shadow, like cobwebbed white and gray colored. I forget what the name of that is. Yeah, and the other one is a black colored one that almost has like a tiger striped, like braille kind of color across it, like a very dull red hue across it, almost like a sunburst to this horse. It's a very rare kind of horse, and it's called the Midnight Sun, and it is a kind of horse that is custom to the lands that you're from, which are Demir. Okay, Midnight Sun horses are very expensive, and it is one of your favorites. Okay, as everyone makes camp, usually it ends with dinner, and everyone, they make a bonfire out in front, and the four of you sit around the fire. Sometimes there are more of you in the troop, but now it's just the four of you. You've picked up other people along the way, other people that had rare and unique gifts, that were a part of the show, that helped you perform the plays and act out the stories that you put on for the public. And then sometimes you lose them. Sometimes people become ashamed of who they really are. Sometimes trouble finds them and they can't hide, not even with you all.
Mm.
It's very high highs and very low lows doing what you four do. But you are free. You are free to lay out there and lay on the ground and feel its warmth and stare up at the sky like the original mortals did. You know the old stories of Ulran, and that people always thought the warmth underneath the earth was to keep people there resting comfortable, and the stars overhead were there to give you guys signs of hope and life from very far away. You are a very superstitious person, and you believe in signs. You believe in the little things that may tell you something that other people don't see. And as you're sitting there around the fire eating that night, and the sparks are coming up from the fire, and you see them dancing in all these kind of familiar ways, and it reminds you of some of your own personal dance moves, the way they twist and turn. You look over curiously, and Hector seems to be very, very intrigued into this book that seems to be bound in a thick, coarse blue color, and it has metal tampered in around the edges of the book. It almost looks like an armored like type book, and it is fairly big. And he seems to be so enamored in this that the food and the stew and the bread and stuff that is there laying beside him, he hasn't even touched it. Whereas the twins are over there eating all of their stuff and kind of sitting in silence, just staring up at the fire and things of that nature too. What is it you're doing in this moment?
There's a part of her, obviously, who is curious about what Hector is up to.
Yeah.
But there are kind of moments when she kind of can gauge whether or not it's like a-okay to ask, kind of like, when the mood is a little bit lighter, when it's been a good day, then okay, maybe we could probe a little bit, and I'm not sure if now's that time.
Would you like to do some kind of check?
Yeah, yes please.
What do you what would you like it to be?
Let me check my character sheet.
No, you tell me what you would like to roll to be able to see if you can feel the room out. I guess that's what we're trying to do now, right? You're trying to gauge the room, right? He seems to be deep into it. He hasn't ate his food, and you can see that Damien is looking over his food curiously, as if he's not going to eat that, I am. And Daphne is just out into her own, as she seems to be humming some kind of song lightly and moving her head back and forth almost like some kind of hippie, and has kind of a pleasant smile on her face. And she's rehearsing some kind of lines to a play that you can remember that you'd done some weeks ago.
Okay. Insight, I think.
Go ahead and roll.
Okay. God, this is kind of like funky.
Hey, it's not like you're really a natural 20. There's only one Jeremy in the group. I mean, come on.
Nah, well, I mean, first of all, it's like everybody lower their expectations for my dice, but I'm like,
hey, this is plan B. This is a new beginning for you.
You say that, and I rolled an 8, and my bonus is +2, so that's like a 10.
Okay, so listen. 10 ties a shoe. 10 flushes the toilet. 10 gets the job done. Right? Come on. 10 gets the job done. Okay. So, with a 10, you if and I'm basing this off what you've told me of your character,
Mhm.
the way we discussed. You are a pretty outgoing individual. You don't see any sign of there being something that you can't discuss here, some taboo. It would be very much in your character to ask him, hey, what's the book? Where'd it come from? What's going on? You would be very interested in that, but you also would be interested in practicing your own dance moves. And if she's over there rehearsing a play, you could do that with her too. You could also be talking to the other twin brother about splitting the food between the two of you. I mean, there's all kinds of orange shit you could do, but you would feel it be appropriate because Hector is used to you being the curious little one.
Mm-hmm.
So, do what you would like here.
I think, there was a part of her that would like to sort of wander sort of behind and like sort of rest her head on his shoulder and look over, but I think she sort of approaches front first to kind of be like, who knows, maybe this is like a top secret type thing. And she does want to like kind of like spy and then get upset him. So I think she kind of wanders over and be like, interesting reading.
As you say that, he looks over and he looks at this bowl for a minute. And he looks up at you and he goes, it is interesting reading. But it worries me. Almost too much. Sit.
Poorly written. I think she sort of plops down next to him as he says sit.
As you do, he takes the book and he takes a piece of his bread and he sits in the book. And he sits over to God. He looks over at you and he puts his hands and he grabs your hands. And he pulls them down. He's sitting Indian style across from you and he looks to you. And for such a handsome kind of guy, and he is primped, he has his hair, his black hair slicked and pulled back. He has a very Antonio Banderas kind of feel to him. But when he looks to you, there's something very warm about him too. You've seen him perform some great things. He's a very robust individual, but in this moment, he says, when we go to the new city, we have to do something magnificent. It cannot be the normal stuff we play for the normal riffraff. This has to be special, like you. At that point, you see a piece of bread fly over and hit him in the side of the head. He's like, what? And the sister Daphne says, it has to be special like you. Gods. And she looks over and she's kind of rolling her eyes. He goes, like all of my children. That's what I meant to say, of course. He says, but it's easier to show you. And he picks you up with your hands and he stands up and he brushes some of the dirt and stuff off of him. And he's got kind of like a half vest and he have very blousy sleeves and he has a collar that's folded up somewhat eccentrically. It's not pointed, but it's a high collar that folds around, and he runs his fingers through his hair and he stands back. He says, we tell stories, correct? We all have our favorite stories. Daphne, I heard you humming yours only just but a few moments ago. She says, yes, we tell stories. That's kind of what we've always done. What's his name? Damien looks over and he goes, don't be a smartass. Dad's just trying to help. She goes, I'm not being a smartass. I'm just saying, yeah, we get it. So what? At that moment, he says, but we're never telling the stories that the people want to hear. We're always telling our stories. For this once. And he reaches over and he grabs the book and he grabs it excitingly and he holds it over his head. He says, let us tell their stories back to them. Show them that their legends have reached us all the way over in the sands of Demir. He goes, if we can do this, we will gain their respect and people will pay attention to us. Who doesn't like to hear their own name used in praise in our stories and our tellings? He goes, I've been looking through, and although not as fantastic as the stories of our home, but there are several that I believe with a little bit of tweaking, we could probably pull off and make look fantastic for them. I'll give you some examples, okay? What do you say to this?
I think she's kind of like amusingly sort of watching at this point as opposed to hopping in.
Okay.
Because I think she definitely sort of looks up to Daphne. Like,
Daphne's looking at you, like kind of rolling her eyes, like,
yeah, it's like that sort of like that adoring little sister energy with her, where she's kind of like just like, you're so cool type thing.
and Daphne is like cool.
Yeah,
She
and
is very
she's-
attractive, but she is kind of like, whatever. But when it comes down to it, her acting is her passion. She gets intense. Like, she is a method person when she comes to her shit. But she can be quite sarcastic. She's not as dreamy-minded as her father.
And I think she kind of likes just the energy that he seems to be building up. She always likes when, he gets a project idea, because when he gets a project idea, then things happen in the sense of like, that's when it feels like they're weaving and telling these incredible stories, as opposed to just like almost like a middle school like book report reading it off. Like, there's a difference between like just listing it off, and then you can't tell, but I'm waving.
No, I'm waving at Danny's. Yeah. And
Yeah, you can't tell, but I'm waving to Danny's
daughter, yes.
Yeah.
That's his youngest, yep.
But yeah, no, there's a difference between a story that is just told and a story that is told, if you know what I mean. So she's
I
kind of
do.
like, just like sort of settling in and sort of watching it back and forth, not challenging her adoptive sister, but just sort of watching. That was a long-winded way to say that she's just hanging out.
Hey, we're here to role play. You're here to. You could be long-winded, Bella. It's perfectly fine. So it means we're involved, and I get exactly what you're saying with all that. Okay, so as your level of interest is there, we've discussed where your mindset is. He says, Damien, read from here. I will show you what I think this will take. Damien says, okay, yeah, he takes the book from him, and he says, where am I reading? And he says, over to here. He says, The Tales of Ulran, story of 58. And you can see the Tales of Ulran is written on the outside of the book in this fantastic typewriting. And it says stories from the Age of Dreams. It says on the front binding of the book. You know, the world is named Ulran. We use it like we say Earth here. So it's that's a lot to put in one book. That's the first thing you would think. You know, the Tales of Ulran. No shit. Must be a lot of stuff in there. And when he says that, he looks down and Damien says, this one is called One in a Million. The tale of Ned the Giant Slayer. Ned? Ned is his name? And the sister kind of laughs. At that moment, Hector says, move on, read. It's good, you'll see. He begins to read. This is Damien reading this, the younger, one of the twin brother. He says, through heroic deeds unflinchingly, Ned the Giant Slayer took the broken lance from Gwyneth, a centurion maiden, fallen and broken from battle. And with the power of the ring of giant strength adorning his head, taken from a giant's pinky finger, grabs the horseman's lance and throws it straight through the heart of the on-charging giant, toppling him at her feet. And he hands the book back to his father. He goes, yes, that is what I'm talking about. We could do this. We could do this. And he goes over and he takes Damien by the shoulders and he moves him and he kind of positions him over here. He says, He says, you'll be the centaur. He says, you can do this. We can do this. And he goes, and you will be the giant. And he goes, and I will be, and he starts giving out roles and talking about how you guys are going to use your spells and how you're going to shape change and wild shape into these things and depict this scene from this book. And you're going to make this happen in a play. He says, the next one, Daphne, number 64. Read. And he hands over the book to her. And she gets up and for some reason, and it's, I keep on wanting to say Azra. Say it one more time for me.
Azara.
Azara. That's easy to say. I got to remember that. Azara, you would see she's kind of, you look over to her with kind of like this chuckle on your face, like you're kind of wanting to play to like that was silly, right? But when you look over to her, Daphne seems to be a little bit interested in this now. You know, she takes the acting part very serious, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she stands up in what I say, 68 or something like that.
58, I think.
58 was the first one, I think. This one is 60.
Okay.
Whatever I said, it's a mute point. Number 104. I'm reading number 104. One Toad Brew. Is this right? One Toad Brew? Hector says, this is one of my favorites. And he smiles. He just gets giddy. He's getting up, you know. And she begins to read. She tells this story, read from the pages of the book. And roughly, how this goes is this. There was a mission by some of the finest warriors from the city of New Gemdar. Mm-hmm. And they were going to try to set up a teleportation circle inside of a giant camp to be able to get out prisoners, people that were held hostage from the war that had fallen. And so there was this dwarven hero called Garad Torwolf. Okay? And Garad was going to lead an expedition of heroes, and Ned, the giant slayer, was one of them. And they had went over, and they were finishing this circle. And in the middle of that, they awoke the giants because Garad belched really loudly. And it turned out that Garad had made his way over to a keg of this ale that the giants had brewed and was tapping that shit in the middle of them trying to sneak into this place to get these people back. And he's chugging away. And out of nowhere, when they go leave, he's like, Brat! And it wakes this giant up. Well, the giant gets up and is starting to head over towards them, right? And he's getting super close, and when she's reading this, it's getting intense, and she even looks a little worried on her face. And the way Daphne's going into detail in this, it's actually got you quite enthralled. As a matter of fact, I want to do a performance thing for her with advantage to let you know just how intently she's getting into this. That is a 20 and a 17. So it's a natural 20 for this. She is living this shit. She is method right now. And what happens in the telling of this story is the reason why it's called One Toe Brew is because when the teleportation circle is complete, Garad refused to leave unless that keg of beer was coming with him. Right? So he's dragging this thing across the ground. He's trying to get into the teleportation circle. They're like, you gotta let it go. Giant's coming. We got the POWs. It's time to run. He's like, we're not going anywhere without the beer. Right? So he's dragging it over. The giant comes in, steps into the circle, raises up. Grad cuts the toe off the giant with his axe. The giant reels back and screams out in pain, loud enough where the people in the actual city could hear this from a distance. Okay? In the teleportation circle complete, they all show back up at the place and a giant toe. It was in the circle, and it came with them back. Mm-hmm. The remains of the giant toe still hang up in the place called the Drunken Mug. Or the toenail part and the bone of it hangs up, and it's on display on the wall in that place. And that formula for that beer is called One Toe Brew, and it was mastered and crafted by Garad himself. And the Demas is said to have been the one that helped distract the giant, so he could take the toe from it, and that's how the legend became. That's how the Drunken Mug became, is because of this adventure, and the toe is hanging there on the place. And as they're telling this, like Hector is ecstatic. He goes, "In this one, I will be the giant, and you will cut off my toe." He goes, "And Azura, you will be the one making the circle, weaving the spells." Yes? And he's pointing out all these ways in which this can work. Okay? And for the third one, he says number 172, because it's a great number. And he hands the book to you. Okay? And this one is called The Ride of a Lifetime. Okay? And when you look through the pages of this, how would you like to read this? Are you reading this matter-of-factly? Are you wanting to stand up and see if you can outdo what Daphne did? Or are you wanting to read this more the way that Damien did? How do you want to perform this?
I think it's somewhere in between, where she's not going Shakespeare like Daphne, but she's not reading it like a book report like Damien. I think it's almost like telling a children's story, where it's like that in between, where it's not the theatrical thespian like "hot thou blah 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 blah."
There was no one in mind. Yeah, I'm with you.
A little bit more confidence than Damien, in the sense of where it's like, a little bit paced, more, storybook-esque.
Okay. Roll a performance check for me,
Sure.
please. Let me know what you get. Remember, you got proficiency in that too, and all other kinds of good shit.
Yeah, well, we know my dice rolls.
We do.
All right. Performance, you said?
I did.
Okay.
You got this. Come on.
Let's see. I rolled a 15, and performance is the proficiency, so 2, and then the +1 because the skills. So that's 17, I think.
Yeah, and then charisma, right, for performance? Which
Yes.
is 3, which takes you up 20.
Woo.
I like it.
30,
I like your avatars, and woo. That's good stuff, man. That's awesome. All right, so with the 20, which is pretty good, the way this telling goes, and I can't just hand you this paper.
Oh, yeah.
But what the story pretty much says, it says the ride of a lifetime. And this one includes Nidemus as well. And you get an idea that these are tales told through a scribe or a bard that wrote down stories as Nidemus, or Ned the Giant Slayer, was telling them to him. A lot of the stories in this are, you can tell parts are blown out of proportion. Some parts don't sound like they're quite possible, even in the world of Ulran, but they are told through maybe even often the alcohol-infused words of a local legend. Okay? Which would be great for popularity. And this one particularly is called The Ride of a Lifetime. And Nidemus is said to have ridden a blinded behemoth that he blinded by his own doing into a petrified giant that had been petrified on the battlefield, turned to stone, okay, toppling the enormous structure into an enemy war cannon in order to destroy it before it could go off. In the reading, it says that the cannon had been set to fire and was going to be able to take out one of the main parts of the new Gemdar's outer walls, and that Nidemus and others had ran them all the giants off, but didn't realize that the cannon was still going. In order to make it fail, he saw one of the giants that had been actually using this thing was petrified, so he jumped up on a behemoth, which are these large, horned creatures. Roll a history check.
Okay. Which I think that's another proficiency.
I think history's intelligence, isn't it, Danny?
I think that was one of the 3, right?
Yeah, it was, yeah. So, yeah, there you go.
Let's see.
Oh,
that was
God.
Okay, I rolled a 17.
You got this.
So that's the proficiency, so, right?
Yep, not quite as massive, but like a Final Fantasy behemoth.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
It was blinded. he steered this son of a bitch into this petrified giant, hitting it, and then knocking it over. And as it collapses, it crushes this war cannon the giant's head. And that is this final story. And in that one, there's like crickets. When you get done reading that, you're like, you look up from the book, and everyone's like, and Hector says, "This one I am not so sure." And they're not quite sure how they're going to portray this one. So, Hector comes up and he says, "But that is why I have you in my life." He says, "You can make this work. Because I have seen you do amazing things over the course of our time together." And he takes your hand and he goes, "This needs your particular spin, your flair. I want you to choreograph this one personally, or any of them, or all of them. I'll leave it up to you." And he goes, "And when we show up in this new Gemdar, we will show them what we are made of." And he's smiling. And he goes, "I cannot wait to see their faces." So, on that note, outside of game, here's what you get to do, Bella.
Okay.
You can take on one of those or all three of those. And I want you to kind of write up and decide how you want people to depict them. Now, you know these things. You know that there is an ability for these three to do wild shapes that are far above and beyond what normal druids should be able to do. Hector seems to be very tied to things that are earth elemented based. You've seen him do a large earth elemental like Cyclops that's like almost 30 foot tall. You've seen him doing a bullete, which are those large earth shark-like creatures that we've talked about. You've seen him do like earth elementals that have flying pieces of boulders that hover around each other and are held together by what seems to be gravity. That's the kind of stuff that he's got up his sleeve. Now, Daphne, her favorite form to take on is this really beautiful creature. It looks like a female lioness mixed with a peacock. It is blue and green. It has these amazing white rings around its eyes. And then it has peacock feathers that hang down from a long tail on the sides of the thing. It's a very beautiful creature. And she does hybrids of nature's animals in that way. Okay? Now, whereas Damien seems to take things that are a little bit more stout. His favorite creature to turn into is a mixture of a great mountain goat or ram that's mixed with a wyvern. So it has 4 sets of horns, or 4 horns that comes out of its head that are large, curling back, and some that curl in different. It can do a fire breath. It has a long scaled tail and long arms with legs with hooves, and it has these wyvern wings on its back. That is one of his favorite creatures. And he does combinations of medium to large size combative mystic creatures, is what he does. So, with that information in mind, and knowing the magical abilities of you, what I'd like for you to do when we decide to play this next time is come up with at least one scene and how you want everyone to act out or portray one of the stories that I've given you tonight.
Okay.
And when we're doing that in our first session, I'll have you do performance checks throughout the shows to know how we're doing. And we'll talk this out and shit like this. And it's going to be really fun. And that's how we'll get things started. Okay?
Again.
Yeah. No, it's all good, but it's going to be fun whatever happens. You know what I'm saying?
Do you happen to have notes for these abilities / the stories? Because
Well,
my
what's great is I
memory
recorded
awful.
this.
Oh, beautiful.
So we have that. So and also we'll take some notes on here in a minute.
Okay.
So it's 11. But we was able to fit everyone in and give each one of you a nice scene, I thought, which is great for the beginning of this Plan B. We're getting everything kind of rolled in, and soon it's going to be up to you all to do your thing.
One little thing.
Yes, please.
Asara absolutely pulls her adoptive family in for a hug before the end of the night.
Okay.
That's how I'm ending that scene with that family.
Okay. That'll work. with that, that was an awesome inspirational night for you guys. I'm curious to see what you all do with this. I'm curious to see how this goes, and I know how we're going to tie it together. That'll be the next time, and it will be up to you folks to see how this develops. Like I say, I have the world around you, but I have no direction as to, or knowing what I'm going to throw at you. It's going to happen. So I'm curious to see how it goes. We're going to go ahead and end. We'll bullshit for just a little bit, just about things. But I'm Brian Kynes. Let me get my stuff ready here to stop recording just a minute. And I appreciate the few of you that watch these things. Hopefully you're enjoying this as much as we enjoy making it. And we'll see you guys hopefully again next Sunday. Take care of yourselves.